What if the order you arrived in your family quietly rewired who you became? For decades, birth order research was dismissed as pop psychology. Then a 2015 study by Damien and Roberts, drawing on nearly 400,000 participants, confirmed consistent personality patterns across a massive, diverse population. The dismissal stopped holding. The clearest patterns center on two big five traits: conscientiousness and openness to experience. Researchers also track extroversion, specifically its dominance facet, the tendency to assert authority and lead. These aren't vague impressions. They're dimensions psychology measures with precision across cultures. Personality traits aren't moods. They're stable, recurring patterns in how a person thinks, feels, and behaves, confirmed by both psychology and neuroscience to emerge from a combination of neural wiring and lived experience. The family is the first environment where personality gets calibrated. Long before school or friendships, the family system is already shaping how a child competes, cooperates, and bids for attention. Evolutionary psychologist Frank Sulloway proposed the niche differentiation hypothesis. Siblings compete for parental investment by occupying distinct roles. The firstborn claims the authority niche. Laterborns must find another way in. Firstborns arrive into undivided parental attention. Then a sibling appears, and something shifts. Research shows firstborns consistently score higher on conscientiousness, the drive to achieve, organize, and meet expectations. But here's the counterintuitive cost. That conscientiousness comes bundled with lower openness to experience. Firstborns tend toward convention. They protect the system that rewarded them. Novelty feels like a threat to order. Here's the surprise. Of the first 23 American astronauts to go into space, 21 were firstborns or only children. The same pattern holds among heads of state. Conscientiousness paired with a drive for authority, it turns out, is a powerful combination. Why does this happen? Parental investment is finite. With a firstborn, parents pour undivided cognitive and emotional resources into one child. That intensity produces a particular kind of wiring: achievement-oriented, rule-respecting, attuned to authority. Middle children grow up negotiating. They can't claim the firstborn's authority or the youngest's novelty. Instead, they develop flexibility. Research consistently shows middle children score higher on openness and social agreeableness than their siblings. That openness isn't accidental, it's behavioral adaptation. The middle child learns that rigid positions lose. Compromise wins resources. That same cognitive flexibility later translates into entrepreneurial thinking and cross-cultural empathy. Here's where the science gets more precise. Birth order doesn't lock you into a fixed personality. The patterns it produces are probabilistic, tendencies that emerge under certain conditions, not sentences handed down at birth. The research describes distributions, not destinies. Earlier birth order studies were riddled with problems. They failed to control for family size, socioeconomic status, and spacing between siblings. For years, the field produced contradictory findings that made the whole enterprise look unreliable. Modern meta-analyses fixed those flaws. By pooling data across hundreds of studies and controlling for confounding variables, researchers found the signal survived. The effects are modest in size, but consistent in direction across cultures. The youngest child enters a family where rules are already loosening. Parents are more experienced, less anxious, and often more permissive. Lastborns score lower on conscientiousness, but higher on risk tolerance and creative divergence. Modern cognitive science confirms that a stable sense of self isn't a fixed entity. The brain assembles it moment by moment, from experience and environment. Birth order shapes the earliest scaffolding of that assembly, the first blueprint, not the final building. But here's where the model gets harder. Only children don't fit neatly into the sequence. They share firstborn conscientiousness without the competitive pressure of siblings. They often show elevated dominance paired with high openness, a combination that rarely appears elsewhere in the data. B.F. Skinner's foundational work on behavior modification showed that reinforcement shapes behavior reliably over time. The family system is a constant reinforcement environment. Birth order determines which behaviors get rewarded inside it. Neuroscience now validates what behavioral science long suspected. Early environments leave measurable traces in neural architecture. The family dynamics surrounding birth order aren't abstract. They're wired into developing brains. These patterns don't stay inside the family home. They travel. Firstborns in workplaces gravitate toward management. Middle children excel in negotiation. Lastborns appear disproportionately in creative and entrepreneurial fields. Relationship researchers have examined birth order pairings. Psychologist Walter Toman, whose family constellation theory shaped decades of clinical practice, observed that firstborn and lastborn pairings tend toward complementary balance, the organizer and the free spirit filling each other's gaps. The pattern surfaces consistently across large clinical datasets. Behavioral insights land hardest when they align systems with how people actually behave. Understanding birth order tendencies helps managers build better teams, therapists ask sharper questions, and individuals recognize patterns they once mistook for fixed character flaws. The honest caveat deserves a full sentence. Effect sizes confirmed by meta-analysis are real but modest. Birth order explains a fraction of personality variance. Gender, culture, parenting style, and individual neuroscience each contribute significantly more. The deeper implication is this: personality is assembled, not assigned. Birth order is one early input into a lifelong process. Recognizing that process gives you something rare, a small but real degree of agency over who you continue to become. The mistake is treating birth order as a label. The value is treating it as a lens. When you recognize that your drive for order or your comfort with chaos may have roots in something as structural as your position in a family, self-knowledge deepens. Scott Barry Kaufman, humanistic psychologist and director of the Center for Human Potential, argues that most people dramatically underestimate how much their early environment, not fixed ability, shapes their sense of what they're capable of. Birth order is one of those invisible early inputs. Remember the question this opened with: what if the order you arrived quietly rewired who you became? The science says, partially, yes. But the wiring isn't permanent. Neural plasticity means the architecture keeps updating throughout your life. What birth order research actually gives us isn't a personality verdict. It's a map of early pressures. Maps are only useful when you know you're holding one. Most people move through life without realizing the map exists. The move isn't to read your birth order and accept the profile. It's to ask which of your most habitual patterns, your need to lead, your instinct to mediate, your comfort with risk, might be adaptive strategies you never consciously chose. Birth order is a window, not a wall. The real subject has always been self-knowledge, the slow, imperfect work of understanding why you are the way you are, so that who you become next is at least partly a choice. Here's the implication that travels farthest. The next time a pattern in your behavior frustrates you, the compulsive organizing, the chronic people-pleasing, the restless need for novelty, treat it as a question, not a verdict. Ask where it came from. That single habit of inquiry is how fixed feeling traits begin to shift.